Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce Tataris, and with me is Rob Lucero, who's running for Congress as a Democrat in California's 34th District. His website is luceroforcongress.com, Lucerofor, congress.com. Before I read a little bit about you, Rob, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, Bruce. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Just real quick, you have a BA in global politics and a master's in public administration. Rob's been active in politics since the 92 presidential campaign. In 2016, Rob founded the American System Group, a consultancy that leads projects serving to rejuvenate that which made America great in the first place, Abraham Lincoln's American system of political economy. And then I'll let you fill in other essential highlights. As you know, we are going to talk about you and your campaign, why you're running for Congress, and then our small business issues. I want your thoughts and opinions about those. So, what would you add first, Rob, about you? What do I or your constituents, most importantly, your district, need to know about you?
First and foremost, it's time. It's time for dramatic change in Congress. It's time for dramatic change at the federal level of our government. It's time to clean up our cities. I'm in the second largest city in the United States, Los Angeles. It's time to clean this place up. It's time to clean it up for the people that live here, including the homeless and others that are suffering on the streets. So it's just time for a lot of big change, and that's what's motivated me to run. I think it's also the perfect time for my campaign to not only win in my district, but to change Congress. It's been the most ineffective and disappointing branch of our government, the House of Representatives and the Senate. But the House is the people's house. So I'm running for Congress for a district, but I'm running really a federal national campaign in terms of a national spotlight on the second largest city in America, the city that's going to be the window to the world in 2028 when the Olympics are here. Whether you like it or not, Los Angeles, the butt of jokes often, is going to be what the world sees of America in 2028. So that gives us an extra motivation to clean it up, not just to show a nice front porch in 2028, but really to start to just deal with the long overdue change that we need.
Thank you. Talk to me about your passion. I infer from what I've read about you just this week, your passion for the potential of American politics and also what a congressman can do, and targeting a little more definitely more specifically, your goals for your district.
Right. Well, again, the House of Representatives is the people's house. Article 1 of the Constitution is not about the president or the courts. It's about the House. It starts with the Congress. So that is where the people are supposed to have a voice. I don't think we're properly represented in my district. I tell people that when I win next year, I will be the first representative that's actually from the district, that grew up here, that's multi-generational in the heart of LA. We'll be the first one since 1993, when the legendary Kennedy Democrat Edward Roybal retired. He was first elected in 1962 in the midterms when President Kennedy was a new president. So we had that legacy, Roybal himself coming out of some amazing changes in LA, coming out of the Great Depression. So my sort of family memory mirrors institutional memory of Los Angeles going back over 100 years. My two of my great grandfathers were involved in building some of the New Deal projects here in Los Angeles. One was paving roads for the Pasadena Freeway, the first freeway in the West, and the other was driving a truck for the flood control system that became the LA River. So my sort of, as I say, family memory of what this place was, even downtown LA. Downtown LA used to be like one of these Christmas movies that you see, whether It's a Wonderful Life or The Christmas Story, where there were lights everywhere on Broadway. People got dressed to go downtown. They took the bus, it was bustling. That was our downtown in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We all know what happened to a lot of the cities coming out of the 60s, into the 70s and 80s. It began to come back about 20 years ago. But since COVID, the shutdown, LA has not come back. So my thing is, people like to complain about Trump and some of the things that he does. Well, let's not give him a reason to come in. Let's clean up our city on our own. We have plenty of people at the state, local level that claim to be great progressives and claim to want to clean things up. Let's do it. Get federal
Mm-hmm.
support for those actions. So I'm running as a New Deal candidate, a real New Deal. And we can get into it, but I'm big on public credit and credit creation from small local banks that would then, of course, feed the heart of America, which is small business.
Nice. What what are your constituents most upset about?
I think we have a funny situation. So New York City's in a big honeymoon right now with Mamdani. He just won the election there in the largest city in America, and kudos to him for what he did. We don't have as many illusions about the Democratic Socialists here in Los Angeles. So we have four members of our city council that are members of the Democratic Socialists. And people are not very happy with the direction of public safety, of the economy, of the state of beyond safety, the cleanliness of the city. It's filthy and it doesn't need to be this way. So I think those are the leading issues. It's the public safety part is families and businesses. So neighborhoods like mine, I live in Eagle Rock, blessed to live in a very nice neighborhood with a business district. I just took a video this morning of there's a new barber shop that's only been open for about 6 months here. There's a guy sleeping on the street right there with a police dog as his guard as he sleeps on the sidewalk. My wife and I walk our kids to school on that street. My wife is actually legally blind. She has a cane. And so if she's walking, she could trigger that dog and get hurt. It's actually a public safety issue. So number one is public safety. We have members of the Democratic Socialists in government. There's one running in my race, and their view is they are abolitionists, which means they believe in abolishing the police. Completely insane. Not something that business people sign up for, not something that families sign up for. So I think it's reached a point where people are quite fed up with the direction of both the establishment party and this new DSA movement.
Wow, okay. I want to ask about your qualifications, your experience, and teach me because I'm really intrigued by what I've been able to see so far on your website. And then
Mhm.
also how that empowers you to be effective as a representative.
Well, in 2010, I started working for the state of California. I worked for the Employment Development Department. And very quickly, I became a leader in the department because I was chosen to be the one of the Southern California directors of the organizational change that the Employment Development Department was going through. So talk about a big bureaucracy, right? Um, we were changing operating systems, working with Deloitte to have a new online system. So I was chosen to be one of the directors of an organizational change. During that time, I finished up my degree and then went to graduate school and studied organizational change management, organizational behavior. So I have a lot of deep experience both in government and in academia on this question of how do you change the behavior of an organization. So the House of Representatives is definitely one of these organizations. You've been seeing it in a deadlocked and ineffective organization for years, right? But one of the things I like to point to right now is that we had a gift this Thanksgiving that many people don't, I think about enough. On November 18th, the House of Representatives voted 427 to 1 to release the Epstein files. The next day, the Senate voted through voice acclamation unanimously to pass that bill, and the president signed it that day. So in 24 hours, we passed a very controversial bill that was dead in the water during the break or the shutdown, frankly. So we at least proved, putting aside the particulars of that situation, we proved that passing legislation in 24 hours is still possible
Hmm.
in this day and age. I talk about the New Deal because I'm a big history guy, and people say, oh, well, that was then, this is now, and you have a partisan divide. I'm like, do you know how divided we were even then? You know how divided we were in 1944 when Roosevelt ran for a fourth term? um, witnessed the 22nd Amendment that said we're never going to let a president serve beyond 2 terms, right?
Mhm.
So, no, I think that it's time for dramatic change in Congress. People who complain about Trump and Trump getting reelected, the Democratic Party has to be in much better shape to prevent that kind of populist movement if that's your concern. Quit blaming him and start changing what's happening within the Democratic Party. So I've worked in the official Democratic Party. 2008, I was the one of the county directors of the state party, working under Senator Art Torres, who was then the chairman of the party. I've also worked with independents and Republicans. I'm friends with very high-level Republicans now. It's not going to be a secret. It isn't now that I worked for Bobby Kennedy Jr., who is, in my view, a great person who, with that, whatever imperfections, he's trying to do the right thing on a lot of things. And his campaign awakened a potential movement in the United States that I still think is there. He remains one of the most popular figures in polls. He's actually more popular than Biden to this day. So tells you something. So I think my experience is it runs that broad spectrum of working with everybody.
Mhm.
And as I say, I'm anchored to this American system, the system that Washington, who sits behind me right now or is over my
Mhm.
shoulder,
Mhm.
and Alexander Hamilton started. But we can get into this part of it. The GI Bill actually unleashed that spirit in the United States of the yeoman citizen that Jefferson wanted with public credit that Hamilton wanted. We've proven we can do both things.
And that is such an empowering history that we'll pin for a future conversation. I want to give you the chance to, talk from the heart about your campaign, your candidacy, your love and aspirations for the district without being guided by a particular question from me.
hmm Sure. Well, as I say, I am a fifth generation Angelino, and I'm not sure there's a lot of us hanging around still. A lot of people left to the suburbs and all that. We stayed in the city. Uh, my parents met at the local middle school in summer school in 1971, I think it was, and then they had to run away from home in 1972. My dad almost signed up for the military at that point, but they had to run away because they found out my mom was pregnant. So I was born in Madera, California, which is a Central Valley town, but they brought me back down to LA when I was about 9 months old. So I grew up here. I was a newspaper boy in Glassell Park. Went to the local public schools, have great memories of it. And just the idea in for me is, LA, as I said earlier, is, and lots of parts of California are the butt of jokes. And we haven't always been that. We're if you listen to Gavin Newsom right now campaigning, it's still, sunshine and rainbows out here. But the fact is we have a lot to do here, that can not only change this place, but one of the things I want to do is I'm an Angelino, but I've actually lived and worked in about 25 different states. I've been a field organizer and been in the Mountain West. I lived in the Mountain West for a minute. I lived in the Midwest, and I was on the East Coast for quite a bit, and did a lot of organizing. I was in the field talking to people. Um,
For
you know,
political campaigns.
yeah, exactly, for and field operations. And one of the strongest memories I have is being one day at Youngstown State University in Youngstown, Ohio, with a table, and it's one of our signs talked about rebuilding the steel mills. This was in like 2004. And this young kid comes up and he's just staring at the sign and he says, look, I'm here at college, but that's really all I want to do. I want to work in a steel plant like my dad and grandfather did, you know. So my passion is really a national passion for rebuilding what America was, as far as building the nation with our hands. My dad was a Teamster. My grandfather was a machinist in the Navy during the Korean War. His brother served in the Second World War. I mean, this is who we are, right? So yeah, my inspiration here is that LA can again be an amazing city, an amazing region. But what I was also going to say is we got to rebuild whole parts of the U.S. and get the pressures off of some of these big cities for people to come here. There's a brain drain out of the Midwest still coming here, youth drain out of Michigan and other places. I lived in Michigan, and Detroit was a city of almost 2 million people in 1950. I mean, I think they're close to about 600,000 now, and it's just absolutely nuts. So a lot to do, and a lot that I'm hoping to get done as a candidate and then as a member of Congress.
You strike me as bursting with valuable insights and experience, Rob. Putting my political consultant hat on,
hmm
which I'm not, but I'm an amateur, historian. So 80%, the 80/20 rule, 80% has got to be about the realities for your district, and you've already shared those. It is those quality of life things. That's the reality.
Hmm.
Um, I know personally good friends who were lifelong Californians, lifelong Los Angelinos,
Hmm.
who in the debacle of the COVID years and the dissolution of civilized things like policing and sanitation and public safety, moved to Nevada
Right.
because, as you alluded, it's these quality of life things that do make, unfortunately, California just a joke or just written off like, well, they're insane. And people would even hear your account of those, you know, Democratic Socialists on the city council. I think you said, like, well, there's the proof. You get the corrosion of public life that you deserve if you vote those,
Yeah.
predilections. And then you sound like a voice of reason and sanity to it. And then on the other hand, boy, the 20%, which is like the treasure inside you, which is your knowledge and awareness of the power and the potential of the American system of economics. So, before I take us into our small business issues and get your thoughts about those, is there anything top of mind to add, top spin to your description of your hopes and dreams for your district?
Well, we were just finding out over the last 24 hours that they say that imitation is the ultimate form of flattery or something like that. The incumbent in my race, Jimmy Gomez, has been making news over the last 24 to 48 hours because he's proposed moving money from the border security movement that the Trump administration has initiated with, I think the figure is 175 billion, into a housing program that he's claiming is the biggest thing since the New Deal, and phrases like that. So he's I think trying to take a page from my book. The difference is I'm talking about a $5 trillion national infrastructure bank as a start, because when you look at and he's also talking about moving spending in a zero-sum game, so playing with the budget to just spend money over here. The return on doing things like that, if you do it, if it were to happen, is 1 to 1. If for every federal dollar you spend on something like that, where you're just giving people money, putting it into an account for them or something, you're going to get $1 back in economic activity. For every dollar the U.S. government put into the GI Bill, which was to give people starter homes and also jobs and businesses, as we'll talk about, the economy got back $6 to $7 for every dollar the federal government put in. It spurred local banking, it spurred local activity. The same thing happened with the Apollo space program. For every dollar the government put into that, $6 to $7 were returned in spinoffs and economic activity in the economy. The American Association of Civil Engineers has said that we have at least a $4 trillion deficit in our infrastructure. They have a report card that they put out on our infrastructure, and we get straight C's, D's, and F's everywhere. We don't get anything higher than a C. Bridges, roads, it's just a disaster, right? And so those are issues where I'm on the proper scale in terms of what I'm talking about,
Hmm.
and the incumbent is way down here playing a game that's not going to go anywhere. So that was fun over the last 24 hours. You'll see that.
I can't wait. And I can picture, and maybe you've got such a thing on your website, a one-page fact sheet that says, this is what's so good about the American system of economics. And here are the top five uh, places or projects that are screaming needs that America has right now that I, as a congressman, do you have something like that? Or does that make
We
a,
do. We do.
mm,
And I'll tell you, there's one really easy example on that, which is the California high-speed rail is a butt of jokes right now, right?
mm,
It is a problem. But part of the reason it's a problem, especially when you compare us to China, which people don't really generally do in the right way, China has built 20,000 miles of high-speed rail over the last 20 years. Say what you want about them. Wow, that's incredible, right? We have no high-speed rail policy in the United States. There's no federal policy on it. Yes, there's Amtrak limping along in different regions and all that, barely holding together an early 20th century grid.
mm,
High-speed rail is actually like almost 100 years old in terms of some of the technologies that Robert Goddard was inventing back in the
mm,
1930s and 40s.
mm.
So we're way behind on that. So I'm for a national high-speed rail policy. We have that in our plan. So it's a modern version of what Lincoln did Lincoln was famous for saying, "My politics are short and sweet. I'm for the protective tariff and national banking, and internal improvements."
Mhm.
Uh, so you can have tariffs, but you got to have internal improvements too. You got to have national economic development policy.
Mhm.
That's the part we don't have. So no, we definitely have that. I'll review it today, now that you said it, and we'll make sure that it's as clean as a whistle, so people can see right away. Boom, this is what we need.
Are you aware of an historian and author named Anton Chaikin?
Oh, I am. Yeah, he's a friend. Great guy. Yeah.
I
I did
consider
some
him a.
research for him. I was
Mhm.
doing research for him in 2003 at the University of Michigan when I first ran across the steps that candidate Kennedy in 1960 stood on at 2 in the morning and spoke to the University of Michigan. These kids had stayed up so late in Ann Arbor to see him, and
Yeah,
that's when he first announced the Peace Corps, the
yeah.
Peace Corps idea. We're going to be putting out a video on that actually pretty soon.
I'm not surprised. I consider Anton a friend as well. I've interviewed him a number of times on my other podcast, and I look calm, but I'm crackling with excitement for you, Rob, and for your candidacy. Um, Talk to me about small businesses. Do you want me to refresh about the things I wrote you about, or are you able to just pick up the ball there, or should I put the basic facts on the table to discuss?
Yeah, I think for me and for your audience, that'd be great. I
Hmm.
will say that small businesses are huge for us here in my district. There's mom and pop shops all over the place, and that's really number one for public safety and the neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I was recruited here to the American Small Business League last year by Lloyd Chapman, who I had interviewed, and he said, "You should work for me." And we had conversations, and I came on board about 10, 11 months ago.
Hmm.
And we're in the business of exposing the fact that small business contracts are going to big businesses. This is from the
Hmm.
federal government and ripping us off of economic prosperity. And our Don't Cheat Women project is all about raising from 5% the required amount of federal contract dollars that ought to go to women owned small businesses. They are half the population. They own 40% of all businesses in America. They sell what the government buys, and yet they're supposed to only get 5%. How is that by any measure fair? And they don't even get that. They typically probably get less than 1% every year. The SBA, this is our major accusation, and this is what people need to confirm. You can look at ASBL.com for decades. It's basically a lie when we hear, oh, the 23% of federal contracts that are supposed to go to small businesses are going to small businesses. No, they're not. Our
Hmm.
legal victories show that. Dozens of congressional investigations show that. SBA Inspector General reports show that. So that's what we want to give to candidates such as you. It's a revelation to many people, and to get convinced about it to the extent that you would campaign on it to teach the fact that we're a small business nation. 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. 98% have less than 100 employees. The average business has 4, 6, 7 employees. 27 or so million of our 36 million small businesses are non employer firms. They are just the owner. 32 million of our businesses sell what the federal government buys. The federal government is the planet's largest purchaser of goods and services, between 800 billion and 1.5 trillion in contracts for goods and services every year, depending on your source and depending on how you can wade through the fog of why they exclude this agency, that agency. That means all those purchases don't have to comply with the requirement that 23% of contracts go to small businesses. It's a muddle and a fuddle, part of a corporate capture going back, I believe, into the 1940s. It doesn't matter. This is the
Hmm.
reality provable for the last 2, 3, 4 decades.
Right.
And when honest Congress people and presidents or administrators of the SBA could come clean and actually make sure and prove and show us that those contracts that they say went to small businesses, we'll feel the effects almost instantly in the millions of jobs that small businesses would have to create if they got those 23% of contracts. The fact that they are going to the 1/10 of 1% of businesses that are big businesses deprives us of the job creation because those businesses are already big. They don't create one new job to perform those billions of dollars in contract work. That's the whole kitchen sink from A to Z. Rob,
Hmm.
talk into that. Talk to me about what you just heard.
No, that's incredible. I was reviewing those statistics a couple of days ago when you sent it to me, and I did talk to Lloyd Chapman during the Kennedy campaign when I was one of the directors on there. Um, it's shocking. It's one of the startling examples of what the powers that be really wanted to stop when they were squashing candidate Kennedy and his campaign last year in 2024.
Mhm.
The Democratic Party was running around talking about how democracy itself was on the line in that election, and that was why they had no Democratic primaries. I don't understand.
Mm.
Because what Bobby was talking about, he wasn't talking about vaccines on the campaign. That was not what he was talking about. He was talking about agency capture. He was talking about State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock, and the very issue you're talking about. So, and we found that there were a lot of young people that were excited about what he was talking about. Young people don't go along with MSNBC, CNN. They actually listen directly to the candidates and the people, and then they go and check themselves. So I'm glad you're getting these facts out because I don't think people understand and know some of this. But yeah, I was reading about the GI Bill recently, and I've been doing some, digging a little deeper, and I ran across that term, the dollar a year man. And so I had to look up what that meant. So do you remember what that means, a dollar a year man? Because it
It's
ties into your reference to the 1940s. And it was
yeah.
basically big corporations that got government contracts, and the CEO would sign up for a dollar a year in pay, but they were really getting a bunch of sweetheart deals and contracts during the war. So the war was obviously the war, and you had certain wartime uh, things that didn't get changed, right? But there was a monopoly problem developing even then from my, brief study of some of it. Um, so no, I mean the fact is we've been healthier as a nation when we have actually decentralized. So there's a way in which, for example, right now, I want to decentralize banking. We have to reorganize banking with reinstating Glass-Steagall. And
Mm.
then on the savings and loans small banking side, we have to have more small banks. You have to have more community banks. In my community, there's Colorado Boulevard and Eagle Rock Boulevard are two of the big streets in my district or my neighborhood where I grew up. 1992, I was a bank teller at Security Pacific Bank, was one of my second, jobs. And it's no longer around, right? It's a savings and loan bank that used to be a neighborhood bank, and Bank of America gobbled it up. Bank of America, which used to be the Bank of San Francisco or the Bank of Italy, based in San Francisco. Then the Bank of America was a California-based bank. Then it became a national bank through deregulation. Then it became an offshore bank. So it's not even a bank of California or even of America. It's an offshore bank in derivatives and other things internationally, right? You have to re-regulate these banks. You have to re-regulate that part of the economy. So Congress has to regulate where it's not and deregulate where it's over-regulating,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So, and we need to learn from folks like yourself that are telling us, look, this is what's really going on. And, we have an incumbent in my case who campaigned when he first started going that he was going to take no corporate money. Um, well, he almost lost the seat in 2022 to a grassroots campaign from the Democratic Socialists. So I think the last cycle he said, well, give me all the corporate money I can take because I got to keep this seat, right?
Mm.
Uh, but no, I think we can get back to having small business, local communities drive the economy. As I was getting to, there should be two local banks here, if not more, that serve the community. Hey, Bruce, you walk in, so and so knows you. They know you're a good guy. They're not even worried. You got a credit rating. I'm sure your credit rating is fine, not my business, but your neighbor has a credit rating that maybe isn't the best, but they know him and they say we're going to make sure you have that credit line to do what you got to do because we're the local bank. We know you, and the government's got our back to make sure we have the resources and the support. You have to have more small activity like that going on.
Mm.
That's how you rebuild America.
We're reaching out to, I think it's up to about 1,800 now candidates for the midterms next year with the same
Mm.
note I sent you and just teaching them, hey, listen, We think if you run on this, it'll resonate with your constituents and it'll help you win. And the when it comes to the federal government's role with small businesses, you're right. Monopolies were such a problem by the 1940s that in 1953, Congress passed the Small Business Act, and
Hmm.
it created the Small Business Administration primarily to oversee that. Then it said a fair share of federal contracts must go to small businesses. Over the decades, it's become 23%. We want to raise the women goal from 5 to 15 to push from 23 to 33, the total that would go to small businesses. And you mentioned another couple of things in there that I wanted to speak back to. Um, Not least of which is once again the power of the American system of economics. And by the way, did have you acquired and enjoyed Anton's latest two volumes of Who We Are,
Yeah.
America? So okay, good. I
Hmm.
just have to mention
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and this small business fraud that I'm describing, that the contracts are really going to big businesses, are unfortunately just it's almost like overload. Like every place you look at the federal government when it says it's doing something good for us, it's not. It's analogous to when you look at official stories like the JFK assassination or even 9/11. I don't
Hmm.
want to poison this interview with subjects you might avoid in your campaign because I want you to share this video far and wide for the rest of your campaign. Like, hey, you know what? That's the best capture of A to Z of why I'm running. So I'll steer away from those hot topics, but
Uh-huh.
they do make the point simply question authority. Good
Hmm.
God in heaven, we have to question authority and we have to send folks to Congress who sound not only competent and capable, but also sane and grounded in reality. And that's you, my friend. So as we kind of bring this to a conclusion, what would you reemphasize? What would you restate? Tell us your website and anything else you
Sure.
want to leave us with, Rob.
Well, I actually want to kind of embrace what you were saying about the question of the JFK assassination, for example, because I think what my campaign is really about is generations. I'm Generation X, the first generation who had boomer parents. For the most part, we had boomer parents. Millennials are our younger brothers and sisters, right, who also had boomer parents. And there's a very interesting gentleman right now who's getting a lot of attention, Scott Galloway, who has written a book called Notes on Being a Man. And he's addressing this problem of, he has all these statistics in his head that I got to try to catch up with him. But one of them is you go into a morgue, there's five bodies, four of them are men from suicide or from drug overdose, and drugs and such. Um, and the issue for me in this campaign really is that we haven't been the same nation since November 22nd, 1963. Chris Matthews talked about it again recently, releasing a new book on Robert Kennedy, who would have turned 100 on, I think it was November 20th this past year, 2025. I got connected to Bobby Jr. through a friend of his father's, Paul Schrade, who lived to be about 94, passed away a couple years ago. He was instrumental in pushing for the fact that somebody killed Bobby from behind. The second gunman actually killed him from behind in the pantry. These are just things that people either know or suspect or suppress. Very few Americans think that Oswald was a lone assassin. And the point being to me is that that's where we began to live a lie. Because not only was President Kennedy killed, but his supposed assassin was killed the next day by a mobster. I mean, this was one of the most professional operations ever. Similar with, 9/11. We could talk about that for a long time. Um, so my campaign is really to fight to revive an honest assessment of who we are, where we are, especially as we come up to this 250th anniversary of the American Declaration of Independence in 2026. There's going to be all kinds of anniversaries of those critical moments from our founding history. The 250th anniversary of George Washington's death is in 2049. But my view is that between now and then, we have all these things to reflect on as we rebuild the nation. It's going to take a generation to do a lot of what we have to do. But that's what I want for my kids. My kids are 11 and 9. We started late, my wife and I, but we're so, happy about them. But we also know there's a world ahead of them that looks too dangerous. We got to straighten it out. So my website is Lucero for Congress or roblucero.com. And I'm running to change Congress out of the second largest city in America. I think we can have a genuine people's movement in the spirit of the American Revolution, a true patriotic philosophical movement. You can do both at the same time, be a philosopher and a citizen soldier. So that's what I'm looking to do.
I wish you every success. Couple quick points. When Bobby Jr. met Lloyd during Bobby's campaign, he was so impressed with what he had to say along
Mhm.
these lines about small businesses that he interviewed Lloyd on his podcast. And
Right.
folks can find the trailer and also the link to the whole thing at ASBL.com. I wrote a book about um, the lies that are killing us and the truths that set us free. I'll
Mhm.
tell you all about that in an email or after we're done
Yeah,
recording.
great.
I completely agree with America suffering a fatal blow in 63 with the killing of President Kennedy. And America died after 9/11 with in my opinion, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the passage of the USA Patriot Act.
Hmm.
And like you literally just said, we have to recreate America. According
Hmm.
to me and many who look at things this way, she doesn't exist anymore because, to great extents, unfortunately, we don't live under the Constitution. We don't have our constitutional rights.
Hmm.
So if we have a prayer, it's by electing representatives like you who know this and will do all that they can in the short space of 2 years, your
Hmm.
first term,
Right.
and then it's up to you whether you want to run for more. But other than that, that's how urgent it is. As calm and
Yeah.
cheerful and civilized and charming as we both have been through this whole conversation, the house is on fire. It's
Yeah.
as urgent as it gets. And I almost used a very colorful New York word, which I'm glad I didn't. So thank you very much for your time, Rob. I am going to talk to you after I'm done recording, and I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce.